Hey, what's up? It's Jake from Nimbus DevOps, and I wanted to show you some more stuff with boto3, and I made a couple examples. Last time we just did some simple, like, list everything in S3, and so some people might be like, yeah, but that's too simple, that you could just find that in the examples on the AWS documentation, and you would be correct, but let's do something a little more spicy. So let's start out with just some plain Python text manipulation. So let's say I have a CloudFormation template, and in this CloudFormation template, it's very short. I'm just going to make an EC2 instance. Okay. Uh, so all I did was give it an instance type, an image ID, and a name tag. And we want to verify that the instance type is available in our region, because sometimes they change, they move around, whatever. T3 micro, you probably won't have a problem, but when you start using more like memory or CPU intensive instance types, sometimes every region is different and you might not have that in a certain region. So we want to go ahead and check that. So let's go first to this little read file that I made, and we want to read the CloudFormation template. So we're going to say with open the file and read mode as file. I'm going to say for every line in the file, if the string instance type is in that line, and then I added these testing steps, we're going to print, hey, I found it. And then we're going to take that, because it should find this line, right? But we don't want the whole line, we just want this last part. So then what we're going to do is we're going to split that line, and then we're going to print what the split line looks like, and then we're going to take the second element of the array, so position 0 would be instance type, position 1 would be T3 micro, and we're going to print that out. So let's see what that looks like. So if I say Python read, it found it, instance type T3 micro, we split it, so now it creates an array, instance type, and T3 micro, and then we're going to return the second element of the array, which is just T3 micro. So now we have our instance type. So that was how I used Python, just native Python stuff to fix or to find the instance type. So now maybe we want to go, well, what are all the instance types like? And I made a get AWS info thing that has this for regions, and it has it for availability zones, and it has it for instance types. So let's say I just want to do, I'll show you an example with regions so you can see it. So if I define this function get regions, and we'll just comment this out for now in case you need it for later. And I'll say, okay, my response is going to be ec2.describe regions. Now, what is ec2? Well, if you go look at the top here, you can see that what I did was I have to import boto3, okay, and when I do that, import the boto3 library, I have to create this client guy right here, and I'm going to name this EC2 variable, and I'm going to say boto3.client, and then I'm going to say for EC2, and that's going to give me the ability to read through the EC2 client. So now I can say EC2 dot, just like you would do for AWS CLI, describe regions. So that's going to be my response. Now, what happens if you print that? Well, let's take a look, and you're going to see why I did what I did. So if I were to take this and I were just going to say print the response, let's see what that looks like. That's a lot. Regions, endpoint, region name, opt-in status. We don't need any of that stuff, right? We just want the region name. So if you look at this as a key value pair, regions is a key, and then this array is a value, right? Well, this whole array is the value, but then like this group right here is the first element in this array. This is EU North 1, and then the second one is AP South 1. So really what we want is we want to take regions because you have regions and then a colon and then all this stuff, right? So if you were to look through this and then find the very end right here would be the end of my array if you look at the square brackets. So I have regions, and then I also have response metadata, which is another key. So this is the first key, this is the second key. So I just want the first key. So what I did was I made a variable called regions, and I just said, hey, inside response, I just want the regions key. Okay, so now if I take that and say print regions, I should get only the first key, which I do. You see my response metadata is now gone. So now that I have that, I want to make a list that's just the region name, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an empty array called region list. And then what I'm going to say is for region and regions, so basically just for every element inside of these arrays or every object inside of this object, what I want to do is I want to append the region list empty array with whatever region name is. Notice region name here is this. And we're going to append that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to print this out. I'm just going to say regions and then start a new line and then list all the regions. And then I'll return the region list so I can use it later. But for now, what we'll do is we'll just print let's print the region list. Region list. Print region list. I already returned it. There we go. Okay. And now I have here are your regions, and then blah 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 blah. And of course, I'm like doing this return thing at the bottom, so we can take this off. I didn't even need that. There you go. And there's all your regions. So that's how you would kind of organize and clean the response from the Boto client to get exactly what it is that you're looking for. So I did this with regions because it's small. So now that you understand that concept, you could do it with availability zones, same exact code. But what happens if we do it with instance types? So now that I don't need to explain this, let me just paste this and let's print this instance type list. And I want you to see what happens here. Okay, so I have all these instance types. Great, right? Well, there's a problem with this, and you may notice this already, but maybe you don't. This is not a complete list. The list is much larger than this. So why is it so small? Well, I'll show you. So if I comment this all out and I print the response, take a look what happens. That is a lot of data, right? Well, the reason that your response is limited at the very end is because of something called pagination. And that's that every time you print something with Python or every time you get information with Python, there is an actual character limit on the quote-unquote page that you're printing out or page that you're getting, right? So it doesn't have to be printing. It could be anything. So when I get this response from this API call, I'm limited in the page. So I actually have to find a way to say, hey, make this a page and then keep going until there's no more pages, which is kind of tricky. So what you end up having to do is this. So I read the file and I find the instance type, right? And then you have to use a paginator. So what I'll do is instead of just calling ec2 dot describe instance types, I'm actually going to pass describe instance types to a paginator, and I'm going to make a paginator. I'm going to do that by just saying ec2.getPaginator, which is an option you can look up in boto3, and I'm going to throw this API call at it, and then I'm going to make a page iterator and say, hey paginator, I want you to paginate and then instance types. And what you're going to find is basically I have all of this info, but again, the first key, right, and then this is the value, these arrays or values, is instance type. So I'm going to paginate on instance types. Then I'm going to create an empty list, and it's basically the same concept as before. And then I'm going to say for page in the page iterator, I want to add that page. I'm going to set a, well, first, for each page, I'm going to set a variable, and I'm going to go in the page, and I'm going to take the index of index types here. And then for I in IT, or for every value inside this index type key value pair, or array, I guess, is not a key value pair, I'm going to append this list, this empty list, with whatever instance type is. And if you look over here, instance type is just this guy. So that's kind of the idea. And then I'll return this list, and then at the end, I'll be able to set this as a variable so that I can use it for somewhere. So what does that look like? Well, let's just grab this. So this is the original code. And I'll comment this out in case you care to look at it and compare while I'm doing the paginator. I'll make this smaller. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just, down here, I'll just say print instance types and see what this looks like. Read, right? And you see how much larger this list is. Yeah, see, look how much larger this list is. This is a complete list. So one of the things you need to take into consideration when making API calls with Python is that you may run into page limits, and you need to use a paginator in order to get all of the values. But now I have all the values. So now my script is going to say, hey, read the CloudFormation type template and find the instance type, which we did. It was T3 micro, right, in here. And then I want you to get every instance type in my region, and my AWS configure is set to US East 1 right now, so that's what I'm searching. So I have all of my instance types, and now it's easy. I just say, hey, if the user instance type, which we set as T3 micro, right? User instance type is just the output of this function, is not in the list of all instance types, then I'm going to say, hey, it's not available. Pick a different one. Or else I'm going to say, hey, it's valid, and we'll go ahead and build a CloudFormation stack. So I'm validating this, and then all I did at the end of that, and we don't really need to get into this too much unless you want me to, but is I just defined where my directory was, created a session, and then used the CloudFormation client variable to define what the session was, and then passed an empty string stack and said basically, hey, open this file, read as fd, and then stack.fd read will read the contents of the file, and then I'll just pass the CloudFormation client session .create stack for the API, name my stack because that's required, and then just pass the template body will just be my variable stack, which is just the reading of this file. So it doesn't actually create the CloudFormation stack until it validates that the instance type is available in that region where it's going to be deployed. So this will prevent your CloudFormation stack from failing if you were to do something different, like say in my CloudFormation template, let's say I made this like T5 micro, right? And if I said Python instance seeker, you did not declare instance type property, please. Oh, yeah, this one's broken. Where is my other one? T35 micro. So if you wanted to do this, yeah, this is where we were doing it. You could just you could validate all of, like, hey, is your region correct? Is your availability zone that you picked correct? It could, because it's going to check for typos as well, stuff like that. So this is just a little friendly way of validating the CloudFormation template value. Well, I shouldn't say value, properties for each resource are correct. And this is kind of nice because a lot of people use parameter mappings, and you could absolutely do that. You could use a parameter mapping and be like, here are the regions you're allowed to use. if you want to limit um, that, and that's fine, but it still doesn't validate that they're available or that they exist. Because the other thing I think I did in here with availability zones is I said, hey, get your availability zones, right? And then for each availability zone, if state is available, then append it, but if not, then don't. And so it only gets a list of available availability zones. So if you're rebuilding stuff in CloudFormation all the time, if something happens to an availability zone, you don't even need to worry about failover for future builds. It'll just not build it there. So this is one way to build something with the boto3 library. There's a lot of different methods available. I highly recommend checking it out. I'll provide a link to the boto3 documentation so you can see what those methods are. But pretty much anything you can build, you can think of, you could build. You could probably build with Python, and this gives you a lot more flexibility with um, dynamic programming and comprehension and things like that, where it's not as declarative as just doing it in CloudFormation or Terraform. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, let me know, and check the link for boto3 and go ahead and give it a try.